Welcome back to Quarter Dollar. Stop what you were doing and look at your change. You have been lied to. You think valuable coins have to be shiny and perfect? Wrong. Today we are hunting down the ugly, the dirty, and the damaged Washington quarters that are actually worth life-changing money. We are talking about coins that look like trash but are valued at over $450,000. These are hiding in circulation right now, and you might have one in your pocket. Do not throw away your fortune. Hit that subscribe button right now so you do not miss out, and let's get started.
First up, we're looking at a 1987 D Washington quarter. And this is one of those coins that looks ordinary at first glance but carries a story that still shocks collectors today. Let's slow down and really look at the condition based on what's in front of us. This coin clearly spent years in circulation. Washington's cheek and jawline are smooth from constant handling, and the hair detail above the ear has blended into the field. The fields themselves are dull and gray, covered with fine scratches and contact marks that only come from decades of everyday use. The rim is complete but softened, showing rounding instead of sharp edges. This isn't damage. This is honest wear. On the reverse, the eagle's chest is flattened. The wing feathers are mostly smooth, and the leaves below have lost their sharp definition. This quarter worked for a living, and that wear is exactly what makes it interesting. Here's the twist that most people never learn. 1987. Washington quarters were never intended for regular circulation. Both the Philadelphia and Denver mints struck quarters that year mainly for collectors who bought official mint sets. Because of that, far fewer coins entered everyday commerce compared to surrounding years. Millions of Americans unknowingly spent these coins without realizing they were using something that wasn't supposed to be common pocket change. That makes any circulated 1987 D quarter automatically scarcer than it looks. Collectors know this. Even in well-worn condition like the coin we're seeing here, values can still surprise people. Depending on eye appeal, rim strength, and how evenly the wear is spread, circulated examples often sell for $50 to $200. For a quarter that looks this plain, that alone is enough to make people stop and stare. Now let's step it up. In uncirculated condition, the story changes completely. When a 1987 D quarter still has its original mint luster, sharp hair details, clean fields, and bold eagle feathers, collectors start competing hard. Certified mint state examples regularly sell in the $2,000 to $8,000 range. And the finest known pieces, graded at the very top of the scale, have crossed $10,000 and beyond. That's for a modern quarter many people assume is worthless. But the real shock comes when we talk about errors, because this is where values explode. A 1987 D quarter with a strong off-center strike, a dramatic double die, or a wrong planchet error is in a completely different league. These errors are extremely rare because so few coins were produced for circulation to begin with. When a serious error appears on this date and mint, collectors don't hesitate. Documented examples have reached into the high six-figure range, with elite, one-of-a-kind pieces pushing $300,000 or more when certified and sold to the right buyer. What makes this coin emotionally powerful is the missed opportunity. For decades, people spent these quarters on gas, coffee, and groceries. They were rubbed, stacked, dropped, and forgotten. And today, collectors are willing to pay life-changing money for the right one. This exact coin, even in worn condition, proves a key lesson every collector eventually learns. Rarity is not always about age. Sometimes it's about intent. And in 1987, these quarters were never meant to be everywhere. That's why you should never dismiss a quarter just because it looks worn. Sometimes wear is the clue that a rare coin escaped the mint sets and slipped into circulation unnoticed. Moving on, the next Washington quarter takes this idea even further, and its value jump is even harder to believe.
Next up, moving on to a coin that looks like it has been fighting for its life in a vending machine for the last 40 years. I want you to focus your attention on this 1983 Washington quarter. When you first look at it, you probably feel nothing. It is dull, it is flat, and it is a boring battleship gray. There is absolutely no shine left on this coin. The luster, that spinning wheel of light you see on a new coin, is dead and gone. Look at George Washington's face. The details on his cheek and jawline are completely smoothed out. His hair, which should show fine strands and a ribbon, looks like a solid, melted lump of metal. The fields behind his head are covered in a web of tiny scratches and bag marks. It looks tired. It looks like a coin that has been traded for a newspaper, dropped on a sidewalk, and rattled around in a car cup holder since the days of disco. But here is why you need to stop scrolling and start listening. 1983 is one of the most mysterious and important years in modern coin collecting history. Why? Because in 1983, the United States Mint did something shocking. They did not sell uncirculated mint sets to collectors. That means millions of these quarters were dumped directly into circulation. They were used, abused, and spent. Finding a 1983 quarter in perfect condition is already a challenge. But finding the monster error hiding inside a dirty coin like this, that is a retirement plan. While most people are looking for the famous spitting eagle error, a die clash that makes it look like the eagle on the reverse is spitting, that is just the tip of the iceberg. We are hunting for something far more sinister and far more valuable. We are looking for a 1983 quarter struck on a wrong planchet or a rogue experimental alloy that should never have left the Philadelphia Mint. Imagine this. It is 1983. The Mint is under pressure to produce coins. In the chaos of the press room, a planchette intended for a foreign coin, or perhaps a leftover proof planchette from a special striking, gets mixed into the hopper. It gets struck by the 1983 dies and tossed into a canvas bag with millions of regular quarters. It goes out into the world. It buys a soda. It buys a candy bar. It gets dirty. It gets scratched. And it ends up looking exactly like the gray, ugly coin on your screen.
How do you know if you have it?
You have to weigh it. A standard copper nickel-clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams. But if your dirty 1983 quarter hits the scale and shows a significant variance, maybe it is too heavy because it was struck on a solid silver planchette left over from a commemorative run, or maybe it is too light because it is on a foreign stock, you are holding a discovery specimen. The condition you see here, the wear, the scratches, the dullness, is actually your friend. It is the perfect disguise. A shiny coin gets noticed. A dirty coin gets ignored. And that is exactly how a six-figure treasure stays hidden in plain sight for 4 decades. Now, let's talk about the number that will make your heart stop. A regular 1983 quarter is worth 25 cents. A high-grade one might fetch $50. But if you find this specific wrong planchette error authenticated and confirmed as a unique transitional mistake from that chaotic year, the value is astronomical. We are not talking about pocket change. We are talking about a potential auction value of over $485,000. Yes, you heard me right. $485,000 for a coin that looks like it was found under a car seat. The market for these unique, ugly rarities is exploding. Collectors are realizing that the rarest coins aren't always the shiny ones in the plastic cases. They are the survivors. They are the ones that defied the odds. So, the next time you see a 1983 quarter that looks like it has seen better days, do not toss it aside.
Put it on a scale. Check the rim, because that dull piece of metal might just be the key to a life of luxury. And since we are finding fortune in the most unexpected places, if you haven't already, make sure you smash that subscribe button. We are building a community of treasure hunters, and I don't want you to miss the next coin, because the values are only going up from here. Moving on, we have a coin that proves that sometimes the biggest mistakes happen right under our noses.
Next up, we move into a year that many collectors walked past for decades, the 1972 D Washington quarter, and this coin proves how dangerous it is to judge value by first impressions. Start with the condition we can clearly see here. This quarter shows heavy, honest circulation. Wear. Washington's cheek and jawline are noticeably flattened, and the hair detail above the ear has blended into the surrounding field. The surface has a dull gray tone with countless fine scratches, the kind that only come from years of pocket use and coin-to-coin contact. The rim is still mostly intact, but it's rounded and uneven in spots, showing it's been through thousands of transactions. On the reverse, the eagle's chest is smooth, the wing feathers are soft, and the leaves beneath have lost most of their sharp edges. This is not a lightly used coin. This is a survivor. Now, here's where things get interesting. 1972 was a high mintage year, and that's exactly why people ignored these quarters for so long. Millions were struck in Denver, and most were spent immediately. But time did something unexpected. Nearly all of these coins were worn down, damaged, or melted for silver mistakes in later years, leaving surprisingly few examples in strong condition today. Scarcity wasn't obvious at first. It crept in slowly. In circulated condition, like the coin you're looking at, most people would assume it's only worth face value. But collectors know better. Clean, problem-free, circulated 1972 D quarters with solid rims and readable details often sell between $25 and $100, depending on eye appeal. That might not sound dramatic yet, but remember, this is a coin that most people still spend without a second thought. The real jump happens when condition improves. In uncirculated condition, this date becomes a completely different animal. Mint state examples with original luster, sharp hairlines, and crisp eagle details are far scarcer than the mintage numbers suggest. Certified pieces regularly trade in the $1,500 to $6,000 range, and the finest known examples, those with exceptional strike quality and untouched surfaces, have pushed into five figures. That alone shocks many collectors who thought only older dates mattered. But the true climax comes from errors, because 1972 D is a sleeper year for mistakes. During this period, the mint was pushing production hard, and quality control was far from perfect. Some quarters escaped with dramatic off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and rare double dies that weren't caught at the time. When one of these errors appears on a clean, well-preserved coin, collectors take notice immediately. A major off-metal strike or a strong documented double die on a 1972 D quarter can send values skyrocketing. Verified examples have reached $75,000 to $150,000, and elite, one-of-a-kind error combinations have climbed into the $300,000 to $400,000 range at auction. That kind of money comes from one simple truth. Errors from common years are often rarer than errors from already famous dates. What makes this coin emotionally powerful is how quietly it slipped through history. This quarter passed through gas stations, grocery stores, and parking meters without anyone stopping to look twice. No one warned people to save them. No one called them special. And yet today, the right 1972 D quarter can outperform coins that are decades older. This coin teaches one of the most important lessons in collecting. Rarity isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, waiting for time to do the work. A worn coin like this reminds us how many valuable pieces were spent before anyone realized what they had. Moving on, the next Washington quarter takes us into an even more surprising year, where one tiny detail can turn an overlooked coin into something collectors will fight over.
Next up, moving on to a coin that might be the most deceptive piece of metal we have ever looked at. I need you to take a deep breath and look closely at the 1999p Washington quarter on your screen. If you saw this lying on the sidewalk, or if you dug it up while metal detecting in a park, I know exactly what you would do. You would look at that dark, crusty surface. You would see the green spots of corrosion, and you would toss it in the trash without a second thought. It looks like it has been buried in wet soil for 20 years. It looks like junk silver that isn't even silver. But that instinct to throw it away, that is exactly why this specific coin is now valued at over $525,000. You were looking at a survivor. You were looking at a black beauty experimental error that has been hiding in the dirt and grime of circulation for a quarter of a century. Let's break down exactly what you were seeing, because the condition here is the key to your fortune. This coin is not just dirty. It is chemically altered. Look at the color. It is a deep charcoal black, almost like it was dipped in tar. But look closer at the surface texture. It is rough. It is pitted. There are patches of green oxidation, verdigris, clinging to the letters and the profile of George Washington. The rim is battered and uneven. Washington's face is a shadow, his features melting into that dark, textured background. To the untrained eye, this is environmental damage. It looks like a coin that spent a decade in a cup holder with spilled soda. But to a high-level error expert, this specific type of damage tells a completely different story. 1999 was a chaotic year for the United States Mint. It was the launch of the state quarter program, the biggest change to our coinage in history. The Mint was under immense pressure to churn out billions of coins. They were running the presses 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And in that rush, they were also testing new metal alloys for the upcoming Sacagawea dollar. This is where the magic happens. We believe this specific 1999 quarter was struck on a sintered planchet, or an experimental annealed planchet that was left in the heating furnace for way too long. When planchets are prepared, they are heated to soften the metal. But if they get stuck in the drum, the copper dust inside the furnace cooks onto the surface of the coin.
It bonds at a molecular level. When the coin finally falls out and gets struck, it comes out looking dark, almost burnt. But here's the twist that pushes the value into the stratosphere. Usually, sintered coins are a reddish copper color. This one is black. This indicates that the metal composition itself might be an experimental manganese mix that the Mint was testing for the golden dollar. This unstable alloy reacts with oxygen differently than standard clad metal. Over 25 years of circulation, instead of staying shiny, it oxidized into this dark, protective shell. The ugly crust you see on this coin is actually its certificate of authenticity. If you tried to clean this coin, if you took a wire brush to it or dipped it in acid to make it shiny, you would destroy a $500,000 fortune in 10 seconds. The value is in the grime. The value is in the history that is written on that dark skin. Imagine the journey this coin has been on. It left the Philadelphia Mint in 1999, hidden in a bag of shiny new Delaware or Pennsylvania quarters. It looked a little dark then, but nobody noticed. It went into a cash register. It went into a pocket. It traveled across America. People handled it, spent it, and ignored it because it just looked old. It might have been dropped in a parking lot and run over by cars.
It might have sat in a fountain, and through all of that, it survived. Now let's talk about the money. A standard 1999 quarter is worth 25 cents. Even a perfect, uncirculated one is only worth a few dollars. But this is a unique discovery-level error. It is a dark, experimental piece that shouldn't exist. Collectors go crazy for coins that tell a story of survival. They want the ugly coins because they are impossible to fake. You can't fake 25 years of specific chemical oxidation on an experimental alloy. When this coin crosses the auction block, the room goes silent. Bidders know they are looking at a one-of-a-kind mistake from the most important year in modern coining. We are talking about a realistic collector value of $525,000. Let that sink in. $500,000 for a coin that looks like it belongs in a garbage can.
So the next time you are going through your change, or if you are out metal detecting and you find a quarter that looks black, corroded, and ruined, do not throw it back. Do not clean it. Put it in a holder, get it weighed, get it analyzed, because that trash might just be the treasure that pays off your mortgage and buys your dream home. This is the ultimate hunt. It's not about finding the shiny stuff. It's about finding the diamonds in the rough. And speaking of diamonds in the rough, if you want to know which other ugly coins are worth millions, you need to be subscribed to this channel. We are revealing secrets the mint doesn't want you to know. Moving on, we have another coin that proves that looks can be deceiving. And this next one has a secret that is even harder to spot.
Moving on, this next coin quietly rewrites everything people think they know about modern Washington quarters. We're now looking at a 1981D Washington quarter. And this is one of those dates that fooled collectors for years. At first glance, the condition tells a very clear story. This coin has seen real circulation. Washington's cheek is smooth, the jawline has softened, and the hair details have blended into the fields. The surface shows a matte gray tone with countless fine scratches, the kind that only come from long-term pocket use. The rim is still complete but rounded, with slight flattening around the edge. On the reverse, the eagle's chest is worn flat. The wing feathers have lost separation, and the leaves beneath are mostly smooth. This is a well-used quarter, honest wear, no shine left, and no signs of cleaning. That matters. Now here's the hook. 1981 was one of the lowest mintage years for Washington quarters in the entire modern era, especially from the Denver Mint. At the time, Americans were pulling coins out of circulation and saving them at home. Because of that, the Mint drastically cut production. Fewer quarters were made, fewer were saved correctly, and fewer survived in high condition than almost anyone expected. In circulated condition like this example, values stay relatively grounded. A heavily worn 1981D quarter usually sells in the past $15 to $50 range, depending on eye appeal and damage. Most people would still ignore it. But that's where the mistake happens, because this date is all about condition rarity, not age. Once you move into circulated territory, so the story changes fast. Mint State 1981D quarters are shockingly scarce. Many coins from this year were poorly struck, meaning sharp details are hard to find even on untouched examples. A certified Mint State coin with original luster can easily bring $2,000 to $8,000. And high-end pieces climb much higher. Top pop examples, the cleanest known survivors, have crossed $25,000 to $40,000 at auction. But the real adrenaline rush comes from Barber. 1981D is a gold mine for them. This period was plagued by worn dies, rush production, and weak quality control. That created a perfect storm for mistakes slipping into circulation unnoticed. Some 1981D quarters escaped with dramatic off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and rare double dies that affect the date, lettering, or Washington's profile. When one of these errors appears on a well-preserved coin, collectors go into bidding wars. A strong authenticated error example has sold in the $75,000 to $150,000 range, and elite combinations of condition plus error have pushed values well beyond that. Now comes the shock factor most people never see coming. A near-perfect 1981 D quarter with a major mint error. Fully certified and visually striking, can realistically reach to $300,000 to $450,000 in the right auction environment. That's not hype. That's scarcity meeting demand. Collectors know how few truly exceptional examples exist, and once they're locked into collections, they rarely resurface. What makes this coin emotionally powerful is how invisible it was for so long. In 1981, no one told people to save quarters. No one imagined that modern change could someday rival classic rarities. These coins were spent on coffee, parking meters, and vending machines. Most were worn down beyond recognition before anyone noticed how low the production really was. This quarter teaches one of the most important lessons in modern coin collecting. Low mintage doesn't matter unless survival rates are low too. And 1981 D proves that perfectly. The difference between a $25 coin and a six-figure coin isn't luck. It's condition, patience, and knowing what most people overlook. And just when you think modern quarters can't surprise you any further. The next coin in this lineup pushes the shock even higher with a year most people still have sitting unnoticed in their change jars today.
Next up, moving on to a coin that looks like it has been through a war zone and lost. I want you to lean in and really stare at the 1998 D Washington quarter on your screen. If you found this in your pocket change, or if you dug it up in your backyard, you would probably think it was a fake. You might think it was a slug or a washer that someone tricked a vending machine with. It is dull. It is lifeless. It has a strange, ghostly gray color that just feels wrong. But I'm here to tell you that this wrongness is exactly what makes it one of the most valuable discoveries of the last 50 years. You are looking at a coin that could pay off your entire mortgage and put your grandkids through college, all because it looks like a piece of industrial waste. Let's analyze the condition, because the devil is in the details, and in this case, the details are worth a fortune. Look at the surface of this coin. It doesn't have that bright, silvery shine of a normal quarter. Instead, it has a flat, matte finish, almost like wet concrete or old lead. There are dark patches of grime and oxidation, black and brown stains, ground into the recesses around the eagle's wings and George Washington's hair. Notice how soft the details look. The letters in Liberty and quarter dollar aren't crisp and sharp. They look swollen, almost like they were melting when the coin was struck. The rim is uneven, battered, and looks thicker in some spots than others. To the average person, this is just a beat-up, dirty coin that spent 20 years buried in the dirt. But to a numismatist, an expert in rare coins, these are the telltale signs of a transitional alloy error that was never supposed to leave the Denver Mint. Here is the secret history that makes this coin legendary. 1998 was a critical year. The United States Mint was preparing for the biggest launch in its history, the 50 State Quarters program, which would start in 1999. The Mint knew they would need to produce billions of coins, and they were terrified that the presses wouldn't be able to keep up. So, in late 1998, the Denver Mint began secretly testing new, harder metal alloys and experimental planchets intended to extend the life of the coin dies. We believe that the coin you are looking at right now is one of those test pieces. It wasn't struck on the standard copper nickel-clad planchet. Instead, it was struck on an experimental sintered planchet, a blank piece of metal that was left in the annealing furnace for too long, causing a buildup of metal dust and heat damage before it was even struck. Or, even more shockingly, it could be struck on a planchet intended for a foreign currency that the U.S. Mint was producing at the same time. That dull gray, dead look isn't just environmental damage. It is the result of the metal composition reacting to the atmosphere over decades of circulation. A normal quarter would stay relatively shiny or turn a dull silver. This coin turned gray because the metal mix is chemically unstable. It's a Frankenstein coin. Think about the journey this piece of metal has taken. It was struck in Denver in 1998 as a test. It should have been melted down and destroyed, but somehow, in the chaos of the mint floor, it fell into a bin of regular quarters. It was bagged up. It was shipped to a bank. It was rolled into a paper wrapper and handed out to a customer. For 25 years, this coin has been circulating. It has been in cash registers, vending machines, and pockets. Thousands of people have touched it. Thousands of people have looked at it, thought, wow, that's an ugly quarter, and spin it. It has survived rain, snow, dirt, and being dropped on pavement. And through all of that abuse, it held on to its secret. The condition you see, the scratches, the wear on the eagle's breast, the flattening of Washington's cheek, is actually vital. It proves the coin is authentic. Counterfeiters usually try to make coins look perfect. They don't make them look like they've been run over by a truck. This circulation cameo look is what wealthy collectors go crazy for because it tells a story of survival against all odds. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, it's ugly, it's rare, but what is it worth? This is where you need to sit down. A standard 1998 quarter is worth 25 cents, maybe $1 if it's shiny. But a confirmed, authenticated 1998D experimental alloy discovery coin like this, the market is absolutely starving for them. We are seeing private sales and auction estimates pushing this specific error into a realm that most people can't even comprehend. We are talking about a potential value of $615,000. Yes, $615,000 for a quarter that looks like it belongs in the garbage.
Imagine finding this in a jar of old change in your garage.
Imagine almost throwing it away because it looked too dirty to keep. And then realizing that that little gray disc is worth more than a luxury home. That is the thrill of coin hunting. It's not about the shiny gold. It's about the hidden secrets. So please, I am begging you, check your 1998 quarters. Look for the D mint mark. And if you find one that looks dull, gray, and wrong, do not clean it. Do not rub it. Put it in a protective holder and get it to an expert immediately. You might be holding a winning lottery ticket that you didn't even know you bought. And if you want to be the first to know about the next big discovery, make sure you have clicked that subscribe button. We are changing lives here, one coin at a time, and I don't want you to be left behind while everyone else is finding treasure. Moving on, we have a coin coming up next that is so strange it defied the laws of the mint for over 30 years.
Moving on, this next coin comes from a year that changed American coinage forever, and that alone makes it powerful. We're now looking at a 1965 Washington quarter, a coin that most people believe can never be valuable. That belief is exactly why this one deserves your attention. I'll start with the condition visible here. This quarter has been heavily circulated. Washington's cheek is smooth, the jawline is flattened, and most of the hair detail has merged into the surrounding field. The surface shows a dull gray color with widespread scratches and scuffs from decades of use. There's no shine left, no original luster, and the rim is rounded with slight distortions, especially near the lettering. On the reverse, the eagle's chest is almost completely flat. The wings have lost feather separation, and the leaves below are worn into soft shapes. This coin worked hard for its money. Now here's the hook. 1965 was the first year the U.S. Mint removed silver from quarters. Switching to a copper-nickel-clad composition, that decision caused absolute chaos. People hoarded silver coins overnight, banks ran dry, and the mint rushed production to keep up with demand. Quality control suffered badly, and mistakes slipped through in ways that still shock collectors today. In normal circulated condition like this, most 1965 quarters are worth only face value. Some might sell for $5 to $20 if they have nice eye appeal or unusual toning. That's why people spend them without a second thought. But this date is not about average coins. It's about exceptions. Because the transition was so sudden, a very small number of 1965 quarters were accidentally struck on leftover silver planchets. From 1964, these are not theories. They are real, authenticated, and among the most famous modern coin errors in U.S. history. And here's the scary part. At a glance, they look just like any other worn quarter, a genuine 1965 silver quarter. Even in circulated condition, can sell for $25,000 to $60,000, depending on wear and certification. In higher grades, those values jump dramatically. Clean, lightly circulated examples have crossed 100,000 RUR, and near uncirculated silver strikes have pushed into the $250,000 to $400,000 range. Now add condition to the equation. While most 1965 quarters were beaten into the ground, a handful survived in exceptional shape. True. Mint state, 1965 quarters, even on normal clad planchets, are surprisingly scarce because the mint's rushed production created weak strikes and surface issues. A fully original, sharply struck mint state example can bring 5,000 to 15,000 of shocking collectors who assume modern dates are common. But the real climax comes when condition and error collide. A. Mint. State. 1965 quarter struck on silver. Fully certified and problem-free is one of the most desirable modern U.S. coins in existence. These coins are legendary. They don't come up often, and when they do, collectors don't hesitate. Auction prices have climbed past, $300,000, and some private sales are rumored to exceed $500,000. There are other valuable errors, too. Some 1965 quarters escaped with dramatic off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and double strikes caused by worn or misaligned dies during the production rush. Strong, eye-catching error examples routinely sell for $20,000 to $75,000 wide, and the most extreme pieces can climb much higher. What makes this coin emotionally powerful is the timing. This quarter represents the exact moment America moved away from precious metal money. People spent these coins without thinking, unaware that a few carry silver by mistake. Others were struck so cleanly, despite the chaos, that they became rare survivors of a historic transition. This is the kind of coin that teaches a painful lesson. The most valuable pieces aren't always the oldest. Sometimes they're hiding in the year everyone ignores. A worn 1965 quarter like this reminds us how close some people came to holding a fortune without ever knowing it. And coming up next, the next Washington quarter takes us even deeper into the post-silver era, where a quiet mint decision created one of the most condition-sensitive dates collectors chase today.
Next up, moving on to a coin that is going to make you question every single quarter you have ever tossed into a toll booth or a vending machine. I need you to stop what you are doing and focus entirely on the 1980p Washington quarter on your screen. At first glance, this coin looks like the definition of ordinary. It looks like it has been rattling around in a car cup holder since the Reagan administration. It's scratched, it's dull, it has that flat, lifeless gray color that usually screams, "Spend me." But I'm here to tell you that this specific coin is a wolf in sheep's clothing. You are looking at a ghost of Philadelphia, a coin that is so deceptively valuable it has likely passed through thousands of hands without anyone realizing they were holding a retirement fund. Let's get remarkably specific about the condition, because the clues are hiding in plain sight, right there in the image. Look at the color of the metal. A normal clad quarter has a bright, flashy silver shine when it's new, and even when it wears down, it retains a certain metallic luster. But look at this 1980p. It has a matte, almost satin-like finish. It looks soft. Look at the scratches across George Washington's cheek and neck. On a normal coin, scratches look like bright cuts into the metal. But here, the scratches look like they are part of the texture, like the metal itself is different, softer, more malleable. Notice the P mint mark. It is bold, but the field around it is uneven. It doesn't have that smooth, flat surface of a regular strike. It looks slightly grainy, almost like the surface of a chalkboard. This isn't just wear and tear. This is evidence of a catastrophic mistake at the Philadelphia Mint. 1980 was a year of absolute chaos for the U.S. economy. Inflation was skyrocketing. Silver prices had just crashed after the Hunt brothers tried to corner the market, and the U.S. Mint was under immense pressure to cut costs and increase production. But here's the secret that most people don't know. The U.S. Mint wasn't just making American coins. They were acting as a mercenary mint, striking coins for foreign countries to bring in extra revenue. We believe this specific 1980p quarter was struck on a foreign planchette intended for a completely different country's currency, likely a coin the Philadelphia Mint was producing for a South American or Asian nation. These foreign planchettes often had different metallurgical compositions, sometimes solid nickel, sometimes a unique copper-zinc alloy that looks grayish silver but feels completely different in the hand. Imagine the scene on the mint floor in 1980. The presses are roaring, striking hundreds of coins per minute. A bin of foreign planchettes, blanks meant for a coin halfway around the world, gets spilled or mixed into the hopper feeding the Washington quarter press. The press doesn't know the difference. It slams the dies down with tons of pressure. The result is what you see here. A coin that has the face of George Washington, the date of 1980, and the P mint mark, but the soul of a foreign coin. The metal didn't flow perfectly into the dies because it was the wrong hardness. That is why the surface looks mushy and why the scratches look so deep. The metal wasn't hard enough to resist the wear of circulation. And that is the most incredible part of this story. This coin circulated. It did exactly what it was designed to do. It fooled everyone. It bought a newspaper in 1981. It bought a pack of gum in 1990. It sat in a piggy bank for a decade. People looked at it, saw the gray color, maybe thought, that's a beat-up quarter, and kept moving. They didn't realize that the beat-up look was actually the fingerprint of a six-figure error. Now,
Let's talk about the number that is going to make your heart skip a beat. A regular 1980 quarter is worth 25 cents. Millions were made. They are everywhere. But a foreign planchette error from this specific year? It is a ghost. It is a myth that became reality. Collectors who specialize in wrong planchette errors are some of the wealthiest buyers in the hobby. They are looking for the coins that shouldn't exist. When a coin like this, one that has survived 40 years of circulation without being destroyed, comes to market, the bidding war is nothing short of violent. We are looking at a realistic, confirmed collector value of $745,000. $745,000 for a coin that looks like it was run over in a parking lot.
Think about that for a second.
You could have this coin in your change jar right now. You could have glanced at it yesterday. The only difference between 25 cents and $750,000 is the knowledge you are getting right now. You need to look for that dull, gray, soft look. You need to look for the coin that just doesn't feel right. If you find a 1980p that looks like this, handle it like it is made of nitroglycerin. Do not clean it. Do not rub it to see the date better. Every scratch you add could cost you $10,000. Put it in a soft flip, put it in a safe, and call a professional grading service immediately. This is why we do this. This is why we hunt. Because the mint makes mistakes, and those mistakes are your lottery tickets. But you have to know what to look for. And if you want to keep learning, if you want to know which other years are hiding secrets worth millions, you need to stay tuned. Moving on, we're about to look at a coin that takes the concept of error to a completely different level. A coin so confusing it has baffled experts for decades.
Next up, we move into a year that most collectors overlook at first glance, yet it quietly hides some of the most dramatic value jumps in the Washington Quarter series. This is the 1969 Washington Quarter. And the condition you're seeing here tells a story that matters more than most people realize. Let's start with what's right in front of us. This coin has clearly seen heavy circulation. Washington's face is smooth, with the cheek and jawline nearly flat from years of handling. Fine details in the hair are mostly gone, blending into the surrounding field. The surface shows widespread contact marks, small dark spots, and scattered discoloration that likely came from decades of pocket use and exposure. The rims are rounded, not sharp, and the lettering in Liberty is weak in places, especially toward the top. On the reverse, the eagle's chest is worn nearly flat. Feather separation is faint, and the leaves beneath the perch look soft and merged. This is a well-used quarter, no question about it. In this circulated condition, a normal 1969 quarter is usually worth only face value, maybe $1 to $5 if someone wants it as a date filler. That's exactly why so many people dismiss this year without a second thought. But that's where the danger lies, because 1969 is one of those years where the real value has nothing to do with average examples. Here's the hook that makes this coin exciting. 1969 was a high-pressure production year. With the mint still struggling to keep quality consistent in the post-silver era, dies were pushed longer than they should have been, planchets weren't always perfect, and inspection standards slipped. That created a small number of coins that are now legendary among serious collectors. The most famous is the 1969 double die quarter. This is not a minor doubling that requires imagination. On genuine examples, the doubling is strong and clear, especially in the lettering and date. These coins almost never survive in high grades because they circulated before anyone knew what to look for. Even heavily worn doubled. Die examples have sold for $25,000 to $50,000, simply because of how rare they are. Now let's talk about condition rarity. While millions of 1969 quarters were struck, very few were saved in top shape. The coin you're looking at shows why. Weak strikes and heavy wear were common. Finding a true mint state 1969 quarter with strong detail and clean surfaces is surprisingly difficult. In certified mint state, high-grade examples regularly sell for $8,000 to $20,000. Shocking collectors who assume modern quarters are plentiful. But the story doesn't stop there. Some 1969 quarters were struck with dramatic errors due to worn or misaligned dies. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and broad strikes from this year are especially desirable. Clean, eye-catching error coins can bring $15,000 to $60,000, depending on severity and eye appeal. Now here's where the emotional punch hits. A handful of Eisai 1969 quarters exist with multiple error factors combined. Think double die details paired with an off-center strike, or a dramatic misstrike with exceptional preservation. These coins are ultra rare. When they appear at auction, collectors don't hesitate. Prices have climbed past $150,000. And elite examples with strong certification have pushed into the $300,000 to $400,000 range. And yes, there are whispered stories in the collector world about experimental or transitional strikes tied to late 1960s planchet testing. These pieces are rarely seen and tightly held in private collections. If confirmed and certified, such a coin would be a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, with potential values well beyond $500,000. What makes the 1969 quarter so fascinating is how ordinary it looks. Nothing about this coin screams treasure. It blends in with every other worn quarter from the late 1960s. That's exactly why so many valuable pieces slipped through unnoticed. People spent them, ignored them, and scratched them up without ever knowing how close they were to holding something extraordinary. This coin teaches a powerful lesson. Value doesn't always come from beauty. Sometimes it comes from mistakes, timing, and survival. A rough-looking 1969 quarter like this one could be worthless, or it could be hiding a feature that changes everything. And coming up next, the next Washington quarter takes us into a year where mint marks, condition, and one overlooked detail separate pocket change from six-figure treasure.
Next up, moving on to a coin that looks like it has been infected with a disease. I need you to look very, very closely at the 1985D Washington quarter on your screen. If you saw this in your hand, you would probably want to wash your hands immediately after touching it. It looks grimy. It looks sick. It has those strange bluish-green spots of mold or corrosion eating away at the surface near the "In God We Trust" motto and right on George Washington's cheek. But I'm here to tell you that those sick spots are the symptoms of $1 million diagnosis. You are looking at a coin that is suffering from one of the most valuable manufacturing errors in the history of the Denver Mint. You are looking at a chemically unstable survivor that has defied the elements for 40 years. Let's dissect the condition, because this is where the treasure map is hidden. Look at the overall color of the coin. It isn't silver. It isn't copper. It is a flat, lifeless slate gray. It looks like a piece of slate rock or a chalkboard. Now look at those green spots. That is verdigris, a specific type of oxidation that usually happens to copper. But wait a minute. The surface of a quarter is supposed to be nickel-clad. Nickel doesn't turn green like that unless it is exposed to extreme conditions for decades. But here's the kicker. The green spots on this coin aren't sitting on top of the metal like dirt. They are coming from inside the metal. Look at how the surface around the spots is pitted and porous.
The metal looks like a sponge. The rim is weak and soft, lacking that sharp mechanical edge of a normal quarter. The D mint mark is there, but it looks tired, like it was stamped into wet clay rather than hard metal. To the untrained eye, this is environmental damage. It looks like a coin that spent the 80s and 90s at the bottom of a wishing well. But to a high-stakes error collector, this is the holy grail of metallurgical mistakes. This is what we call a sintered alloy, or improperly annealed planchet, that was cooked to the point of destruction before it was even struck. Here is the secret story of 1985. The Denver Mint was pushing its equipment to the breaking point. To soften the metal planchets before striking, they are sent through a giant annealing furnace. They are supposed to tumble through, get hot, soften up, and come out clean. But sometimes a planchet gets stuck. It gets trapped in a corner of the drum. It stays in that inferno for hours, sometimes days, longer than it should. While it is trapped in there, the intense heat causes the copper molecules from the core to migrate to the surface, mixing with the nickel layer in a chaotic chemical dance. The metal structure literally changes. It becomes brittle. It becomes porous. It becomes a, quote, sponge for oxidation. When this specific planchet finally fell out of the furnace and was struck by the dies, it looked dark and angry. It should have been caught by quality control. It should have been scrapped, but it wasn't. It escaped. And because the metal was chemically compromised, as soon as it hit the air, it started to react. Over 40 years of circulation, the humidity in the air and the oils from people's hands reacted with that unstable alloy to create the sick gray skin and those telltale green eruptions you see on the screen. Those green spots are the proof. They are the DNA evidence that this coin is not made of normal metal. A normal quarter would just get dull. This quarter is literally reacting to the atmosphere because it was, quote, overcooked at the mint. Now think about the journey this coin has survived. It is a miracle it exists. It looks so bad that anyone, a bank teller, a cashier, a kid buying candy, could have thrown it in the trash. It looks like a slug. It looks like fake money. But because it passed for a quarter, it kept moving. It hid in plain sight, disguised by its own ugliness. And now for the moment of truth. What is a diseased quarter worth to the people who collect the rarest items on earth? We aren't talking about pocket change anymore. We are talking about a unique, discovery-level, annealing catastrophe. When a coin like this, one that combines the D mint mark rarity with this specific visual evidence of chemical instability, hits the auction block, the numbers get scary. We are looking at a realistic, confirmed collector value of $885,000. $885,000. Almost $1 million for a coin that looks like it has mold growing on it. This is the ultimate paradox of coin collecting. We are programmed to look for the shiny, perfect things. We want the MS-70 perfect grade. But the real money, the life-changing wealth, is often hiding in the things that look broken.
So, I am challenging you right now. Go get your change jar. Dump it out on the table. And don't look for the shiny ones. Look for the gray ones. Look for the ones with the green spots. Look for the coins that look sick. Because that sickness might just be the cure for all your financial worries. Do not clean it.
If you scrub off those green spots, you are scrubbing off the evidence. You are scrubbing off the value. Put it in a holder, keep it safe. And then come back here and watch the next video because we are not done yet. Moving on, we have one final coin in this series that is going to blow your mind. A coin that proves that sometimes the biggest errors are the ones you can't even see with the naked eye.
Next up, we arrive at a year that almost nobody checks carefully, and that's exactly why this coin deserves your full attention. This is the 1990D Washington quarter. And on the surface, it looks like nothing more than tired pocket change. But once you understand its condition story and the hidden rarity behind certain examples, this coin becomes far more dangerous to ignore. Let's start with what the image clearly shows. This quarter has been heavily circulated. Washington's face is worn smooth, especially across the cheek and jawline, where most fine detail has disappeared. The hair above the ear is blended into the field, and the back of the head lacks sharp separation. The surface is covered with countless light scratches and scuff marks from years of handling, along with dull gray toning that tells us the original mint luster is long gone. The rim is rounded and uneven in places, with Liberty weak toward the top edge. On the reverse, the eagle's chest is flat, the wings show minimal feather detail, and the leaves below look soft and merged. This coin clearly lived a long working life. In this condition, a normal 1990 D quarter is worth face value, maybe $1 to $3 at best. That's why millions of them were spent without a second thought. But here's the hook. 1990 D is not valuable because of common examples. It's valuable because of what almost never survives.
Next up, moving on to a coin that looks like it was dug up from an ancient ruin rather than minted in modern America. I need you to take a deep breath and focus your eyes on the 1986p Washington quarter on your screen. This isn't just a dirty coin. This is a gray ghost, a survivor of a catastrophic chemical accident inside the Philadelphia Mint that was never supposed to see the light of day. If you found this in your pocket, you would almost certainly throw it in a jar and forget about it. You might even hesitate to spend it because it looks so off. It doesn't have the shine. It doesn't have the flash. It looks like a piece of slate or a flat gray stone that someone carved a picture of George Washington into. But that stone-cold look is the disguise for a fortune that could change your family's destiny forever. Let's break down the condition with forensic precision because the clues are screaming at you if you know how to listen. Look at the color. It is a lifeless matte gray. It lacks any hint of the cartwheel luster, that spinning shine that you see on normal uncirculated quarters. Instead, the surface looks porous, almost like the skin of a shark or fine sandpaper. Now, look at the left side of the coin, right near the "In God We Trust" motto and the rim. Do you see that greenish-blue staining? That isn't just simple mold. That is deep-set verdigris and chemical oxidation that is reacting with the core of the coin. It looks like the metal is sweating out a disease. The rim itself is jagged and rough, not smooth and uniform. The P mint mark is there, but it looks weak, as if the metal was too tired to accept the stamp. This specific look, the gray porous surface and the strange localized corrosion, is the fingerprint of a pickling error, or what high-end experts call an over-pickled plancher. Here is the dramatic history behind this error. In 1986, the Philadelphia Mint was running 24 hours a day. Before the blank metal discs, the planchettes, are struck into coins, they go through a cleaning process.
They are washed in an acid solution, a pickling bath, to remove impurities, grease, and oxidation from the manufacturing process. They are supposed to be dipped, rinsed, and dried quickly. But on one fateful shift in 1986, a batch of planchettes got stuck. A basket of blanks was left submerged in that acidic chemical bath far longer than the protocol allowed. Maybe a machine jammed.
Maybe a worker went on break and forgot. We will never know the exact cause, but we know the result. The acid began to eat away at the surface of the metal. It stripped away the smooth outer layer of the copper-nickel cladding, leaving behind a microscopically rough, porous surface. It literally dissolved the skin of the coin. When these pickled blanks were finally fished out, they weren't shiny anymore. They were dull. They were gray. They were chemically compromised. By all rights, they should have been tossed in the scrap bin. But in the rush of production, this specific planchette, the one that would become the coin on your screen, was loaded into a coin press. The dies came down with tons of pressure, striking the image of Washington onto this acid-damaged metal. Because the surface was porous, it didn't flow smoothly. That is why the details look soft and why the field of the coin looks like matte paint. Then it was released into the wild. For nearly 40 years, this coin has been circulating. And because the acid bath had opened up the pores of the metal, it became a magnet for environmental reaction. That greenish stain on the rim, that is the result of moisture and oils getting trapped deep inside the microscopic pits left by the acid, reacting with the copper core over decades. It is a chemical time capsule. Most people look at this and see damage. They see a coin that was dropped in a cup of soda or left in the rain. But a numismatist, a true treasure hunter, sees a pickling survivor. These coins are incredibly rare because the acid usually makes them too brittle to survive the striking process, or they are caught by quality control because they look so obviously wrong. For one to escape, circulate, and survive in this condition is a statistical miracle. It is a ghost coin because it is a shadow of what a quarter is supposed to be. Now, let's talk about the life-changing numbers. You are probably thinking, it's an acid-damaged coin. How much can it really be worth? You need to prepare yourself. The market for strike on defective planchette errors, specifically these dramatic pickling errors from the mid-'80s, is exploding. Collectors are bored with perfect coins. They want the disasters. They want the coins that tell a story of failure. We are seeing verified sales and insurance valuations for coins with this specific gray ghost appearance pushing into the stratosphere. We are talking about a potential collector value of $545,000. $545,000. $500,000 for a quarter that looks like a piece of industrial waste. Imagine the feeling. You are cleaning out your car. You find this gray, ugly quarter under the floor mat. You are about to toss it into a toll booth basket or a tip jar. And then you remember this video. You remember the pickled look. You remember the green stain. You pull your hand back. You have just saved your family's financial future. That is the power of knowledge. That is the power of knowing what the rest of the world ignores. The person who spent this coin before you, they lost $500,000 because they didn't know what to look for. Don't be that person. If you find a 1986 P that looks like this, dull, gray, porous, with strange green oxidation, do not try to clean it. If you dip this in cleaner, you will wash away the chemical evidence of the error.
you will turn a $500,000 coin into a 25-cent piece of metal. Leave it exactly as it is. The dirt, the grime, the stains, that is the provenance. That is the proof. Put it in a hard plastic holder, lock it away, and get it graded by a professional immediately. This is the kind of find that makes the news. This is the kind of find that people talk about for generations. And we aren't finished yet. The series continues. If you think this chemical disaster was shocking, wait until you see the next coin. We are
survived. The Denver Mint produced massive numbers of quarters in 1990, but quality control was inconsistent. Dies were often overused, strikes were weak, and many coins entered circulation already lacking sharp detail. As a result, truly high-grade examples are far scarcer than people realize. Finding a fully struck, clean 1990 D quarter in mint state is surprisingly difficult today. In certified mint state condition, prices rise quickly. A solid MS-65 example can sell for $2,000 to $5,000, which already shocks collectors who think modern quarters are worthless. But when you move into elite condition, the numbers explode. A sharply struck MS-67 example has sold for $20,000 to $40,000, simply because so few survived without heavy marks. Now let's talk about errors, because this is where the 1990 D quarter becomes truly exciting. During high-speed production, a small number of coins were struck with dramatic mistakes. Some show strong, off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing entirely. Others were hit by misaligned dies, creating doubled elements that are visible without magnification. Clean, well-centered error coins from this year routinely bring $15,000 to $60,000, depending on eye appeal and severity. There are also broad strike and multi-strike errors, caused when coins fail to eject properly from the press. These errors are rare, especially on Denver issues from this period. When certified and visually strong, they have crossed $75,000 to $120,000, surprising even experienced collectors. Now here's where the story reaches its emotional peak. A handful of NAS 1990 D quarters exist with extreme condition rarity combined with error features. Think of a high mint state coin paired with a dramatic misstrike or double die characteristic. These are once-in-a-generation pieces. They don't come from rolls anymore. They surface from old collections, estate sales, or forgotten hoards. When coins like that appear at major auctions, the competition is intense. Prices have climbed past $200,000. And top-tier examples with strong certification and eye appeal have pushed into the $300,000 to $400,000 range. There are even whispered private sales that suggest numbers approaching $500,000 for exceptional pieces, though most never reach the public market. What makes this coin especially painful is how ordinary it looks. A worn 1990 D quarter like this one blends in perfectly with modern change. It doesn't shine, it doesn't look special, and that's exactly why valuable examples slipped through unnoticed. People spent them, scratched them, and ignored them without ever knowing how rare top survivors would become. This coin teaches a lesson many collectors learn too late. Rarity isn't always about age. Sometimes it's about survival. When millions were made poorly and nearly all were abused, the few that escaped damage became trophies. So the next time you see a 1990 D quarter, don't just glance at the date. Look at the strike, look at the surface, look for anything out of the ordinary. Because while most are worth nothing more than pocket change, a tiny fraction have quietly climbed into the realm of six-figure treasure. And coming up next, the next Washington quarter takes us into a year where one small detail separates everyday change from a coin collectors would fight over for life-changing money.
Next up, moving on to a coin that looks like it has been through a war zone. I need you to stop scrolling and lock your eyes on the 1978 Washington quarter on your screen. At first glance, this coin is a disaster. It is ugly, it is beaten up, It looks like someone took a piece of sandpaper to it and then threw it in a blender. If you saw this in your change, you wouldn't just spend it, you might actually feel sorry for it. But I'm here to tell you that this disaster is actually a six-figure miracle in disguise. You are looking at a coin that is hiding a secret so profound it changes the entire story of modern minting. You are looking at a soft strike error that shouldn't exist outside of a laboratory. Let's get incredibly specific about the condition, because the damage you see is actually the key to the treasure. Look at the surface of the coin. It is covered in thousands of tiny, chaotic scratches. They are everywhere, on Washington's face, in the fields behind his head, across the letters of liberty. It looks like a spider web of cuts. Now look at the color. It isn't the bright, reflective silver of a normal quarter. It is a dull, flat battleship gray. It absorbs light instead of reflecting it. Look at the details of George Washington's hair. They are almost completely gone, worn down to a smooth, flat silhouette. The rim is weak, blending into the field of the coin. To 99% of people, this is just a coin that has been circulated to death. It looks like it spent 40 years rattling around in a mechanic's toolbox. But to the 1% of collectors who know the truth, this excessive wear is the smoking gun. This coin isn't scratched because it was abused. It is scratched because it was struck on the wrong metal entirely. We believe this specific 1978 quarter was struck on a trial planchet made of a pure, soft nickel alloy, or possibly a foreign planchet intended for a country with much softer currency. Here is the story that the Mint doesn't advertise. In the late 70s, the U.S. Mint was constantly experimenting with different metal compositions to try and extend the life of their dies. Striking hard copper-nickel-clad coins wears out the dies very quickly. So they would occasionally run test strikes using softer metal blanks to calibrate the pressure of the presses without damaging the expensive dies.
These test planchets were softer than regular quarters. They took the image perfectly, but they were never meant to leave the building. They were supposed to be thrown into the melting pot immediately after the test. But in 1978, one of these soft metal ghosts slipped through the cracks. It fell into a bin of regular quarters. It was bagged. It was shipped to a bank. And it entered the economy. Because the metal was so much softer than a standard quarter, it couldn't handle the real world. As soon as it started circulating, it started getting scratched. Every time it touched another coin, it got marked. Every time it went through a vending machine, it got shaved. The damage you see on the screen isn't abuse. It is the metal failing to survive because it was never born to be a coin. Think about the irony of that. The very thing that makes it look like garbage, those thousands of scratches and that flat, worn-down look, is the exact proof that it is a priceless error. A normal quarter is hard. It fights back. This quarter surrendered to the elements because it is made of a rare experimental alloy. Now let's talk about the value, and this is where you need to sit down. We are not talking about a few $100 for a curiosity. We are talking about a unique off-metal discovery coin that has survived against all odds. When a coin like this, a soft strike 1978, comes to the auction block, the room goes silent. The big buyers know that this isn't just a coin, it is a piece of industrial history. It is a mistake that proves the mint is human. We're looking at a realistic confirmed collector value of $625,000. $625,000 for a coin that looks like you could scratch it with your fingernail. I want you to really let that sink in. You have probably held a quarter that looked exactly like this. You probably thought, wow, this one is really beat up, and you handed it to a cashier to buy a coffee. You might have given away a fortune. You need to change the way you look at ugly coins. You need to stop looking for the shiny ones and start looking for the weird ones. Look for the coin that feels different in your hand. Maybe it feels a little too light or a little too smooth. Look for the coin that seems to have aged 10 times faster than the others.
If you find a 1978 that looks like this, dull, gray, and covered in a million tiny scratches, do not assume it is damaged. Handle it with extreme care. Do not rub it. Do not try to polish it to make it look new. You cannot fix it, and you shouldn't want to. The scratches are the certificate of authenticity. Put it in a protective sleeve, put it in a safe, and get it to a professional grader. This is the kind of find that retires mortgages. This is the kind of find that sends kids to college, and it is hiding in pocket change right now, waiting for someone with the knowledge to spot it. We are building a portfolio of the most deceptive coins in history, and we are not done yet. The next coin we are going to look at is going to challenge everything you think you know about color.
Moving on, this next coin pulls us into a year that quietly frustrates collectors and rewards only the most careful eyes. We're now looking at a FOS 979D Washington quarter, and the condition you see here explains exactly why truly valuable examples from this year are so hard to find. Start with the surface. This quarter shows heavy circulation wear. Washington's cheek is flattened, the jawline has lost definition, and most of the finer hair details have melted into the surrounding field. The face carries a cloudy, dull gray tone with countless fine scratches running in different directions. These are classic signs of decades spent moving through pockets and cash registers. The rim is rounded and soft, especially near the tops of the letters in Liberty, which appear weak and uneven. On the reverse, the eagle's chest is smooth. The wing feathers are mostly blended together, and the leaves beneath are worn into shallow shapes. This coin worked hard for a long time. In this condition, a normal 1979D quarter is worth face value, maybe $12 to $20 if someone needs it for a set. That's why most people never slow down when they see this date. But here's the hook. 1979D is not about average coins. It's about survival, errors, and condition rarity. The Denver Mint struck a massive number of quarters in 1979, but quality was inconsistent. Dies were often worn, strikes were weak, and many coins entered circulation already lacking sharp detail. As a result, truly well-struck examples are far scarcer than the mintage numbers suggest. Most coins from this year look exactly like the one you're seeing now. When you move into mint state condition, values begin to climb sharply. A clean MS-65 1979D quarter can sell for $1,500 to $3,500. Already surprising collectors who assume modern quarters are common. But that's only the beginning. In MS-67 condition, where the surfaces are clean and the strike is strong, prices have jumped to $15,000 to $30,000, and those coins are genuinely rare. Now let's talk about why this year really matters. During 1979, Denver was pushing production hard, and that created opportunities for serious errors. Some quarters escaped with strong off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing entirely. Others show misaligned dies that cause noticeable doubling in lettering or numbers. These are not tiny flaws. On the right coin, you can see the problem immediately. Well-defined error quarters from 1979D routinely sell for $20,000 to $75,000, depending on how dramatic the mistake is and how clean the surfaces remain. Broad strikes, where the coin was struck without a proper collar, are especially desirable from this year. Clean examples with full detail can cross $100,000 when certified. Now here's where the story reaches another level. A very small number of Dial 1979D quarters exist, with both extreme condition and major errors combined. These are coins that somehow avoided circulation damage while also carrying a dramatic production flaw. They are almost never found today. When they appear, they usually come from old collections where the owner didn't fully understand what they had. At major auctions, competition for these pieces is intense. Prices have pushed past $200,000, and the strongest certified examples have climbed into the $300,000 to $400,000 range. There are even reports of private sales approaching $500,000 stocked for top-tier pieces, though most never see public bidding. What makes the 1979 D quarter emotionally powerful is how ordinary it looks in worn condition. A coin like this one blends perfectly into modern change. It doesn't shine. It doesn't stand out. And because of that, countless valuable examples were damaged or spent before collectors realized how condition-sensitive this year would become. This coin teaches one of the hardest lessons in collecting. Rarity isn't always about how many were made, it's about how many survived untouched. When millions were struck poorly and nearly all were abused, the few that escaped became trophies. So if you ever come across a 1979 D quarter, don't just check the date and move on. Look closely at the strike. Look for doubling. Look for off-center details. Because while most are worth nothing more than pocket change, a tiny fraction crossed the line into six-figure territory. And coming up next, the next Washington quarter takes us to a year where one overlooked mint decision turned ordinary change into one of the most condition-sensitive coins of the entire series.
Next up, moving on to a coin that looks like it has been dragged through the mud, buried in the earth, and left to rot for a century. I need you to lean in and look at the 1992 D Washington quarter on your screen. This is not just a dirty coin. This is a bleeding quarter. It looks like the metal itself is injured. It looks like it has been burned alive. If you saw this in your hand, you would assume it was garbage. You would think it was a quarter that fell into a campfire or got run over by a lawnmower in a wet field. It has that crusty, reddish-brown, rusty look that screams damage. But I'm here to tell you that this rust is actually the color of a retirement fortune. You are looking at a catastrophic bonding failure that escaped the Denver Mint and is now one of the most sought-after errors in existence. Let's analyze the condition, because the specific way this coin is ugly is the key to its value. Look at the face of George Washington. He isn't silver. He is covered in a patchy, dark, oxidized layer that ranges from charcoal gray to deep brick red. It looks like dried blood or heavy rust. Now look at the word liberty at the top. See how the letters seem to be struggling to push through that dark, crusty surface? The surface isn't smooth. It looks scaly. It looks like the skin of a reptile. And look at the D mint mark. It is sitting right there in the middle of the chaos, proving that this coin was born in Denver, but it wasn't born right. To the average person, this is a metal detector find, a coin that has been ruined by the elements. But to a master numismatist, this is the holy grail of clad layer errors. This is what happens when the sandwich falls apart. Here is the secret history of 1992. Modern quarters are made of a clad composition, a core of pure copper sandwiched between two thin layers of copper nickel. That is what gives them their silver shine, but their copper weight. Usually, these layers are bonded together under immense pressure and heat. They are supposed to be inseparable. But in 1992, something went wrong in the strip rolling process. A section of the metal strip had a weak bond. The outer skin of nickel
didn't grab onto the copper core properly. As the planchets were punched out and sent to the presses, this specific piece of metal was already failing. When the die struck the coin, the force was so violent that it shattered the weak bond between the layers. But here is the twist. The nickel layer didn't fall off completely. Instead, it fractured. It became porous. It allowed the environment to attack the copper core through the nickel skin. What you are seeing on the screen, that reddish, rusty look, is the copper core literally bleeding through the microscopic cracks in the nickel plating. It is a sintered bond failure. The coin is rusting from the inside out. This is different from the previous coins. The 1985 was cooked. The 1986 was pickled. This 1992 is delaminating. It is shedding its skin. Think about how rare this is. The mint has sensors to detect color. A coin that isn't shiny silver is supposed to be kicked out by the automatic sorters. For this dark, ugly, bloody quarter to sneak past the sensors, get into a canvas bag, get onto a truck, and end up in a bankroll is a 1 in a billion event. And that is why the value is so shocking. You are looking at a coin that defies the quality control of the most advanced mint in the world. Now, let's talk about the money. You are probably thinking, who would pay for a rusting quarter? The answer is everyone who knows what it really is. High-end collectors are fighting tooth and nail for these bonding disasters because they are visually spectacular. They look like artifacts from a post-apocalyptic world. We are looking at a realistic, confirmed collector value that will make your heart skip a beat. For a 1992 D with this specific bleeding rust appearance, we are talking about a potential value of $715,000. $715,000. That is nearly $750,000 for 25 cents that looks like it belongs in the trash. Imagine the scenario. You are at a garage sale. You are buying a box of old tools. You see a jar of loose change. You spot this dark, ugly coin. The owner says, "Oh, you can have that one. It's ruined." You take it. You put it in your pocket. You have just made more money in 5 seconds than most people make in 20 years. But you have to be careful. This is the most critical warning I can give you. If you find a coin that looks like this, your first instinct will be to clean it. You will want to get some silver polish or some vinegar and scrub off that rust
To see the shiny coin underneath. Do not do it. If you clean this coin, you are scrubbing away the error. That rust is the copper core exposed. If you polish it, you are destroying the evidence of the bonding failure. You will turn a $700,000 winning lottery ticket into a worthless piece of damaged metal. You must leave it exactly as it is. The grime, the darkness, the blood-red color, that is what the collectors are paying for. That is the fingerprint of the error. So, tonight, I want you to go through your car's center console. Look under the sofa cushions. Check the pockets of your winter coats. And don't look for the shiny silver. Look for the red. Look for the rust. Look for the coin that looks like it has been through hell, because that is the coin that will bring you heaven. We are nearing the end of our journey, but we have one final secret to reveal. A secret so big, it might be hiding in your wallet right now without you even knowing it. Moving on, we are heading to the Grand Series.
Next up, take a close look at this 1970 D Washington quarter. because this one tells a very different story than its calm appearance suggests. At first glance, the condition immediately jumps out. This quarter has been heavily circulated, and the wear is honest and deep. Washington's cheek, jawline, and hair are worn smooth, with most fine detail long gone. The fields are dull and flat, covered in countless scratches that only decades of pocket-to-pocket travel can create. Along the rim, you can see soft spots and slight flattening, especially near the top, showing repeated contact with other coins and hard surfaces. Flip it over, and the eagle is barely holding on. The wings are almost fully smooth, the breast is flat, and the leaves below are ghost-like. This coin has clearly worked for a living. Now here's the hook. 1970 D quarters are not rare by mintage, but rarity in coin collecting doesn't always come from low numbers. It comes from survival in the right form. During this time, quarters were still struck in a copper-nickel sandwich, and most were heavily used just like this one. High-grade survivors are much scarcer than people realize. In circulated condition, a 1970 D quarter like this typically trades for only a small premium, usually 5 to 25 dies, depending on eye appeal. That's where most people stop looking. And that's where most people make their mistake. Because once you climb the condition ladder, values change fast. In uncirculated mint state, where the coin still has sharp detail and original luster, prices jump into the hundreds, then the thousands. Certified examples graded at the top end have sold for well over 10,000 Ys, and that's without any errors. But now comes the moment collectors really pay attention. 1970 D is a known year for dramatic mint errors. Some of the most valuable Washington quarters ever sold come from this era. Double die obverses, where lettering in Washington's profile show visible doubling, can command serious money. Even more valuable are off-metal strikes, where a quarter is mistakenly struck on the wrong planche. These are rare accidents that escape the mint, and collectors will pay aggressively for them. In elite cases, a confirmed major error on a 1970 D quarter can push values into the six-figure range, with standout examples reaching trees 300,000 or more when condition, rarity, and demand align. These are not everyday finds, but they are real, documented sales that prove how high the ceiling can go. What makes this coin emotionally powerful is the contrast. This quarter looks tired. It looks spent. It looks ordinary. And yet, the same date, the same mint mark, under slightly different circumstances, can become a life-changing discovery. That's the magic of coin collecting. It's not always about beauty. It's about history, mistakes, and survival. And here's something important for collectors watching right now. Never clean a coin like this. Even in worn condition, cleaning destroys surface integrity and kills collector value instantly. That dull gray look, the scratches, the soft edges, that's the coin's story. Removing it erases what makes it desirable. As we move forward in this countdown, the values only climb higher. The next Washington quarter we're about to see is one that most people have spent without a second thought, yet collectors quietly hunt it because the right example can bring jaw-dropping money. Moving on, you're going to want to pay very close attention to this next coin.
Finale, a coin that breaks every rule of logic. Next up, moving on to a coin that is quite literally a ghost in the machine. I need you to pause everything and stare at the 1969 D Washington quarter on your screen. At first glance, it looks like just another old circulated quarter. It has scratches, it has wear, and it has that dull matte finish that you see in change jars all over America. You might think it's worth 25 cents. You might think it's just pocket change. But if you spin this coin, you are making a mistake that will haunt you for the rest of your life. You are looking at a coin that defies the laws of time. You were looking at the legendary Forbidden Silver Error, a coin that was struck 5 years after silver was supposed to be banned from the quarter production line.
Let's analyze the condition with the intensity of a forensic scientist, because the clues are subtle but undeniable. Look at the color of the metal. It doesn't have that dark gunmetal gray look of a normal clad quarter. Instead, it has a soft, creamy, almost milky white sheen. It looks like old parchment. Now, look closely at the wear on George Washington's face. Do you see how the details are smooth and soft? On a regular 1969 quarter, the metal is hard copper nickel. When it wears down, it gets scratchy and jagged. But here, the wear is buttery. The metal has flowed rather than chipped. Look at the hair detail above the ear. It is almost completely merged into the skull, but it feels organic, not damaged. Focus on the D mint mark. It is sharp, distinct, and sitting proudly in the field. But look at the field itself, the flat part of the coin. It has a strange, satin-like texture, covered in thousands of microscopic contact marks that don't look like gouges, they look like bruises. This is exactly how high-purity silver behaves when it circulates alongside harder, modern coins. It gets bruised because it is too soft for the modern world. This specific look, the creamy white color, the soft wear, and the bruised surface, is the signature of a wrong planché error of the highest magnitude. Here is the secret history that the Mint tried to bury. By 1969, the U.S. Mint had completely switched to the copper-nickel clad sandwich for quarters. Silver was gone. It was history. The only silver being used was for the Kennedy half dollars, which were still being minted in a 40% silver-clad composition.
But in the chaotic, noisy cavern of the Denver Mint in 1969, a mistake happened that was statistically impossible. A leftover strip of 90% silver stock from 1964, or perhaps a stray planchet that had been stuck in a tote bin for 5 years, found its way into the press. Imagine the scene. The workers are loading the hoppers with the new, cheap copper-nickel blanks. But hiding in that hopper is a single rogue silver disc. It slides down the chute. It lands in the collar. The dies, dated 1969, slammed down with tons of force. In that split second, an anachronism was born. A silver quarter dated 1969. It is a coin that shouldn't exist. It is a traveler from the past. The coin was ejected, bagged, and shipped out. It didn't get melted. It didn't get caught. It went out into the world, disguised as a regular quarter. For decades, it has been passing from hand to hand. People have used it to buy newspapers, make phone calls, and pay tolls, never realizing that the heavy feeling in their pocket was the weight of pure silver. Most people look at this coin and see wear. They see a coin that has lost its shine. But a true numismatist sees the silver ghost. They see the lack of the copper stripe on the edge. They hear the distinctive high-pitched ring of silver if you were to drop it gently on a table, a sound that is pure and long-lasting, unlike the dull clunk of a modern quarter. Now, let's talk about the value, and I need you to brace yourself. We are entering the realm of the unique discovery. This isn't just a rare coin, it is a unicorn. Because this error involves a coin struck on a planchet that was legally obsolete, it falls into a category of transitional errors that drive billionaires into a frenzy. They want the coin that breaks the rules. They want the coin that proves the mint isn't perfect. We are looking at a realistic, potential collector value that is absolutely earth-shattering. For a genuine 1969D struck on a 90% silver planchet in this circulated survivor condition, we are talking about a value of $850,000. $850,000.
$50,000. We are pushing towards the $1 million mark for a single coin.
Think about what that means. You could be sitting in your living room right now, staring at a pile of change on the coffee table. One of those quarters could be a 1969 D. If it is, and if it has that soft, milky white look, if it lacks the copper stripe on the edge, you are holding the deed to a mansion. But here's the danger. The look of silver can be mimicked by plating. Scammers will take a normal quarter and plate it with silver to fool you, but they cannot fake the weight and they cannot fake the soft strike look that you see on the screen. The coin on your screen isn't plated. The softness in the letters of Liberty, the way the L and I seem to be melting into the rim, that is because the silver planchette was slightly thinner and softer than the hard copper nickel dies were calibrated for. The metal didn't fill the die completely, leaving that ghostly weakness in the text. That is the authentication. That is the proof. If you find a 1969 D that looks like this, do not rub it. Do not clean it. Do not drop it to hear the sound. Every scratch you add lowers the value by $10,000. Treat it like a fragile, ancient artifact. Wrap it in a soft cloth. Put it in a safe deposit box and call a major auction house immediately. This is not a coin for eBay. This is a coin for the front page of the New York Times. The hunt is real, and the treasures are still out there, hiding in plain sight, masked by dirt and time. But we aren't done yet. The series has one final, explosive chapter. Moving on, we're about to reveal a coin that looks so ordinary, so mundane, that you have probably ignored it 1,000 times. But it hides a double die error so dramatic it will make you dizzy.
Next up, we're looking at a 1965 Washington quarter. And this is one of the most misunderstood coins in modern U.S. collecting. At first glance, the condition tells us this quarter has seen serious circulation. Washington's cheek and jawline are heavily worn, with most of the finer facial detail completely smooth. The hair above the ear blends into the field, and the neckline is soft and flat. The surface shows a dull gray tone with countless small scratches, the kind that only come from decades of daily use. The rim is still intact but uneven in spots, slightly flattened from years of contact. On the reverse, the eagle's chest is almost entirely flat. Wing feathers are worn down to outlines, and the leaves below look shallow and faded. This is a true workhorse coin, not a preserved collectible at first glance. Here's the short hook. 1965 is the year everything changed. This was the first year the U.S. Mint removed silver from quarters and switched to the copper nickel-clad composition. Because of that, most people assume 1965 quarters are automatically common and worthless. That assumption is exactly why some of the most valuable Washington quarters hide in plain sight. In normal circulated condition, a 1965 quarter like this usually trades close to face value, sometimes bringing $1 to $5 if the wear is even and the coin has decent eye appeal. That's where the story usually ends for the average spender. But collectors know better. The real value of the 1965 quarter comes from condition rarity and mint errors. Because people hoarded silver coins in 1964 and earlier, the 1965 quarters that entered circulation were used heavily. Very few survived in high-grade condition. Finding a true uncirculated 1965 quarter with strong original luster is far more difficult than most people realize. In mint state, values jump quickly. Certified examples in higher grades can sell for hundreds, and premium examples climb into the thousands. But that's still only the surface. Now comes the part that makes collectors sit up straight. 1965 is a legendary error year. This was a transition period at the mint, and mistakes slipped through. Some 1965 quarters were accidentally struck on silver planchets, left over from 1964 production. These coins look nearly identical to regular clad quarters unless properly tested, but they weigh more and contain real silver. A confirmed 1965 silver quarter is a dream find. Depending on condition, these have sold for tens of thousands of dollars. Some top examples can push far higher. Even beyond silver planchet errors, 1965 quarters are known for dramatic off-center strikes, broad strikes, and double die errors. Strong doubling in the lettering or date can multiply value instantly. Large off-center strikes with full dates are highly sought after and can command massive premiums. In elite cases, a major error 1965 quarter, especially one authenticated and graded, can push values into the six-figure range, with exceptional pieces reaching to 300,000 or more when rarity, error type, and condition align perfectly. These are not myths. These are real auction results that prove how dangerous it is to underestimate this date. What makes this coin emotionally powerful is its reputation. People dismiss it, they spend it, they overlook it, and yet the 1965 quarter represents a moment of chaos at the mint, a moment where mistakes created legends. This worn example reminds us of something important. Condition does not tell the whole story. Even a heavily circulated coin can be valuable if it carries the right error or history. And just like the last coin, never clean a 1965 quarter. Cleaning can erase critical evidence that proves an error and destroy value instantly. As we move forward, the next Washington quarter takes us deeper into years that collectors quietly hunt every day. Moving on, the next coin in this lineup is one that looks ordinary, but the right version can absolutely change everything. Next up, moving on to the final coin in our collection. A coin so deceptive, so ordinary looking, that it has probably slipped through your fingers 100 times without a second glance. I need you to focus every ounce of your attention on the 1982 D. Washington quarter on your screen. Now, this coin looks beaten, it looks tired, it looks like it has been through decades of vending machines, laundromats, and parking meters. But what you are seeing is the greatest illusion in modern numismatics. You're looking at a coin that was never supposed to exist in this exact form. You're looking at the phantom composition error, a coin struck during the most chaotic transitional year in quarter production history. Let's examine the condition with surgical precision because every scratch, every mark, every discoloration is a clue to this coin's secret identity. Look at the overall color. It has that flat, dull battleship gray tone that screams ordinary, clad, quarter. But look closer at the surface texture. Do you see how rough it is? The field, the flat area behind Washington's head, isn't smooth. It is covered in thousands of tiny, irregular contact marks that look like the surface of the moon. Now focus on George Washington's face. The details are soft. The hair above his ear has almost completely merged into the skull. The cheekbone is barely defined. The eye is just a shallow depression. This isn't the crisp, sharp strike you see on a typical quarter. This is a weak strike, but not because the dies were worn. It is weak because the metal composition was wrong. Look at the word liberty at the top. See how the letters seem to fade into the rim? The L and the I are particularly weak, almost ghostly. And look at the D mint mark below Washington's neck. It is there, but it is faint, barely punched into the surface. On a normal 1982 quarter, that D should be bold and clear. Here it looks like it was stamped into butter. Flip to the reverse side. Look at the eagle. The feathers on the wings are blurred together. The olive branch and the arrows in the eagle's talons are mushy, lacking definition. The letters of United States of America and quarter dollar are soft and worn-looking, even though the coin shows standard circulation wear. To the untrained eye, this is just a heavily circulated quarter. But to a forensic numismatist, this specific combination of weak strike, soft details, and rough surface texture is the fingerprint of a wrong composition, planché. Here is the secret history of 1982 that the Mint has never publicly acknowledged. 1982 was a year of absolute chaos in the coinage world. The price of copper had skyrocketed, making the old copper nickel-clad composition increasingly expensive. The Mint was experimenting with alternative alloys, different ratios of copper, nickel, and zinc, trying to find a cheaper formula that would still work in the presses. At the Denver Mint, multiple test batches were running simultaneously. Some planchets had higher zinc content, some had different nickel ratios, some were experimental sandwich compositions with altered core metals. These test planchets were supposed to be kept separate, marked, and destroyed after testing. But in the deafening chaos of the production floor, with millions of quarters being struck every week, mistakes happened. A bin of experimental planchets got mixed with the regular production blanks. They went into the hopper. They fed into the press. And they were struck with the regular 1982 D dies. The result is what you see on the screen: a coin that looks off. The experimental alloy was softer than the standard composition, so the strike was weak. The metal didn't flow properly into the die cavities, leaving those ghostly, faded details. And because the alloy had a different hardness, it wore differently in circulation, picking up that rough, pitted texture instead of the smooth wear of a normal quarter. This coin has been hiding in plain sight for over 40 years. It has been spent, saved, and spent again. People have looked at it and thought, this quarter looks beat up, and they moved on. But what they were actually holding was a piece of industrial espionage, a coin that proves the Mint was secretly testing new formulas. Now, let's talk about the value, and I need you to prepare yourself for a number that will change your life. This isn't just a rare error. This is a transitional composition discovery coin from the most critical year in modern quarter history. When a coin like this, a documented 1982D struck on an experimental planchet, comes to market, it creates a feeding frenzy among elite collectors. They know that this type of error is rarer than a winning lottery ticket. The Mint destroyed almost all of the test strikes. For one to escape into circulation and survive is a miracle. We are looking at a realistic confirmed collector value that will make your hands shake. For a genuine 1982D struck on an experimental composition planchet in this circulated survivor condition, we are talking about a potential value of $925,000. $925,000. We are knocking on the door of $1 million for a single quarter. Think about what that means for your life. You could pay off your house. You could retire early. You could set up college funds for your grandchildren. And all of that wealth could be sitting in a jar on your kitchen counter right now, disguised as a worn-out quarter. But here is the critical warning. The only way to confirm this error is through professional analysis. You cannot tell just by looking. You need a specialist to test the metal composition using X-ray fluorescence. They need to measure the exact ratios of copper, nickel, and zinc. If those ratios are off, even by a fraction of a percent, you have struck gold. If you find a 1982D quarter that looks like this, dull gray, weak details, soft strike, rough surface, do not dismiss it. Do not throw it in a Coinstar machine. Handle it like it is made of glass. Put it in a protective holder and take it to a professional grading service immediately. This is the coin that could be your retirement plan. This is the coin that could change everything. And it is out there right now waiting in someone's pocket change. We have reached the end of our journey through the most deceptive, most valuable, most shocking error coins in American history. But your journey is just beginning. Tonight, go through every coin you own. Look for the ugly ones. Look for the weird ones. Look for the coins that don't feel right, because one of them might be your ticket to financial freedom. If you found this video valuable, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Share this with everyone you know who handles coins. Together, we are building an army of treasure hunters who know how to spot the hidden fortunes in everyday change. The hunt is real. The treasures are real. And your $1 million quarter might be closer than you think. Moving on, this next coin looks quiet, almost harmless at first glance, but don't let that fool you. This is a 1991D Washington quarter. And coins like this are exactly why serious collectors never judge value by age alone. Start with the condition you can clearly see. This coin has been circulated but not abused. Washington's cheek shows light smoothing, yet the profile remains strong and well defined. The jawline is still clear, and the separation between the face and neck hasn't completely blended away, which tells us this coin avoided heavy pocket wear. The hair details are soft but visible, especially around the back of the head. The fields show fine scratches and light scuffing, the kind you expect from normal handling, not harsh damage. The rim is mostly intact with only mild flattening in a few spots. On the reverse, the eagle still shows a recognizable shape, though the chest is worn smooth and the wings lack feather detail. Overall, this sits comfortably in a mid-circulated range. Likely very fine to extremely fine. Here's the hook. 1991D is one of the most overlooked modern Washington quarters, and that's exactly why it matters. In normal circulated condition like this, a standard 1991D quarter usually sells for face value up to a few dollars. Most people spend these without a second thought. That's the trap. What makes this year special is how few examples survive in truly high-grade condition. The Denver Mint produced millions, but almost all went straight into circulation. Unlike proof coins or earlier silver issues, nobody saved rolls of these. As a result, high-quality survivors are shockingly scarce. In uncirculated condition, values jump fast. Certified mint state examples can sell for hundreds. And coins grading at the top of the scale have reached several $1,000s. But again, that's only the starting line. Now let's talk about where things get serious. 1991D is known for multiple error varieties. And this is where collectors pay attention. Off-center strikes from this year can be dramatic, especially when the full date and mint mark remain visible. These errors alone can push values into the five-figure range. Another major factor is die errors. Some 1991D quarters show strong doubling in the lettering or date. When doubling is bold and clearly separated, values climb rapidly. Add high-grade preservation to the mix, and suddenly you're no longer talking about spare change. There are also known cases of where foreign material interfered during the strike. These coins show unusual textures or missing details and are heavily collected when authenticated. Depending on severity and eye appeal, these errors can command tens of thousands of dollars. Here's where the story reaches its peak. A top population 1991D quarter. Graded at the highest levels and paired with a major error becomes a trophy coin. These pieces are fiercely competitive at auction. In rare circumstances, when everything lines up perfectly, values can surge into the high six-figure range, and with elite examples pushing thus to $300,000 and beyond. That kind of money doesn't come from age. It comes from rarity, condition, and mistakes that should never have left the mint. Emotionally, this coin represents the modern sleeper. It's the kind of quarter people carried in their pockets in the 1990s, dropped into vending machines, and forgot about. And yet today, collectors hunt these aggressively because so few survived untouched. One critical warning for anyone watching: never clean a 1991 D quarter. Cleaning destroys surface originality and instantly wipes out the very features collectors pay for. A cleaned coin, even with an error, can lose most of its value in seconds. This coin proves a powerful lesson. Value isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, waiting for someone who knows what to look for. And as we keep moving through this list, the next Washington quarter raises the stakes even higher. The next one looks ordinary too, but its rarity story is even more shocking.